Welcome to Morning Momentum with Coffey, a podcast that's dedicated to motivating you with inspiring stories through the power of momentum. Each week, business growth leader, international speaker, trainer, coach, and author Betti Coffey sits down with a new industry leader to find out who they are, what they're doing, and how the power of momentum drives them towards success. Because when you've got momentum, stuff gets done, things happen, and you're on top of the world. You can accomplish anything. And that's what this show is all about, creating unstoppable momentum. It's Morning Momentum with Coffey. Take it away, Betti.
Welcome to the Morning Momentum with Coffey podcast. I'm so excited about our show today. I'll tell you what, it's spring 2021 here. I'm so happy. I'm ready for spring. I know my audience out there is ready for spring. Yes, spring is renewal. Spring is looking at things differently. It's not being afraid to change. It's being, that word we hear everywhere that's so totally in demand, resiliency. And how many of you out there right now are thinking about, okay, it's time, I'm excited, the sun's out, the birds are chirping, hopefully the snows are all gone everywhere in the United States and everywhere, but we're thinking to ourselves, okay, this is a great time to start over. My guest today is an absolute professional at this. And you know that I'm always talking about momentum. And if you have momentum in your life, you can accomplish anything. So my guest today is Maria Reitan. And I am absolutely crazy about telling you about her today because she's energizing. I had the best conversation with her when I was talking to her originally a few weeks ago. And I got excited talking to her. So, okay, I'm going to fill you in a little bit about Maria and then enough of Betti and we go into Maria. All right, Maria Reitan is the founder and lead coach at Jump Team Coaching, where she helps journalists. And I want to take a time out here for a second. Not just journalists, but any person out there right now that's thinking about making a job change or a career change or just wants to know, what do I do next? Help me, give me guidance. This show is for you. All right. So she helps people move on in their careers and she helps them make that jump with journalists, make that jump out of the newsroom into what she calls stick the landing. When I heard that stick the landing, I asked Maria, okay, what do we mean by that? Is that like a sky jumping term or something? She goes, no, really, stick the landing means you land on your feet, kind of like a gymnast does. And she's all about helping you do that. She understands especially what journalists are facing right now in this climate and temperature we are in spring 2021. She spent 15 years at major news markets around the country as a reporter, producer, news manager, and director before making that jump herself. So she's been there, guys. She's lived it. That initial move to one of the nation's most decorated public relations advertising agency, which was the Carmichael Lynch Company, allowed her to parlay her news skills to help drive results for some of the biggest household names around. Names like Train, American Standard, Tempur-Pedic, Select Comfort, Calphalon, Master Brand Cabinets, Hasbro, and Gerber, just to name a couple. She spent a decade at Carmichael before moving to a boutique PR agency called Lola Red, and she was president and chief operating strategy officer there. Since her days in news, Maria has enjoyed, I think we all can relate to this, she's enjoyed building organizations and teams. That's one of the reasons I like talking to her, because when I was speaking with her, she really loves and enjoys working with people. I like that. Okay, so she founded the strategic communications consultancy company called Top Sales Strategies in 2015. She kept her broadcasting roots in marketing to women, podcasting on Webmaster Radio, and which she hosted for 13 years. She's a pro. I'm asking you for help on my podcast. And then she had podcast purse strings, which she reached tens of thousands of business professionals. And now Dream Possible has debuted in March of 2021. So write that down or keep that in your mind. Go out and listen to Dream Possible podcast. All right. So what else about Maria? She has been awarded the Silver Anvil, the Bronze Anvil, PR Platinum, PR Week, Golden Saber, and Minneapolis PRSA Awards. She has a Bachelor of Arts in Journalism, and when she has some free time, she loves walking, hiking, reading, and traveling, which I know she's thrilled to get back to anytime soon. Now, before we start in, I want to tell you something. She has an offer for all of our guests today on the show for Morning Momentum with Coffee podcast. She is offering a 1-hour free coaching call to our listeners on the show today. Wow, 1 hour free. Okay, so hang in there, and she's going to tell you how you can get a hold of her. All right, so without any further ado, Maria, welcome to the Morning Momentum with Coffee podcast. It's great to have you on board.
Oh my gosh. That's the best introduction I've ever had, Betty. Just fantastic. Oh my gosh. Fabulous.
So you've accomplished so much. You really have. And I wanted to make note on those things. But
thank you.
As I said, when I spoke with you a few weeks ago, what really struck me and really hit home was your love of working with people, your caring attitude that you wanted them to find the right niche for them, the right positions, help them through this change, because this whole time has been nothing but change.
Crazy.
So I love that about you. And you have a totally giving heart about that. So what made you establish Jump Team?
Oh, it's such a great question. Well, I think maybe many of your viewers out there, your listeners out there can relate. You know, I had this idea for 15 years that I noodled on and just had it in my heart that I needed to do this. I made the leap out of news into PR and advertising. And I did it all on my own. It took me really a year of exploration and 200 people that I talked to figure out what I wanted to do next with my life. And in the subsequent 15 years after I made that leap, I was getting phone calls from friends, strangers, friends of friends, asking me how I did it. And I would spend an hour on the phone with them, and I would give them my best advice, and I would listen, and I would counsel, and then they would go on their way, and I never knew oftentimes whatever happened to them. And I felt every time, I wish I could do more. I wish I could do more. And after 15 years of thinking about it, I had a month where I had a little bit of a dip in my business. And I thought, oh, I could probably take this month and really give this some thought. So I reached out to a dear friend of mine who teaches women specifically how to make the move from corporate into coaching businesses. And she said to me, you should take my course, Maria. You'd be a great coach. She has the 3-month course. I said, I only have a month, so I need to do your 3-month course in a month. And she said, of course you do. So that's what I did. I took her 3-month course in a month, and it was invaluable to me. It really helped me envision an online curriculum by which I could virtually coach these journalists and really anyone on how to make a move, a pivot in your career, moving from one thing to something completely foreign. And it's a step-by-step 8-module or 8-course curriculum, typically done on a weekly basis over the course of 2 months. But it really began as a passion project, something, again, I'd been thinking about for 15 years and finally just said, you know what, I need to do this. And the other thing that happened, Betty, that really kind of hit me was those phone calls were coming more frequently to me. Journalists had been under fire, as you probably have seen, right? And there's many reasons it's challenging for journalists right now. And the pandemic alone has seen 40,000 journalists leave and depart the business. And so what I didn't know is what would happen with COVID when I started this, right? Because this was right before COVID hit. But I felt this pull to do it now. And I really believe it was because some other entity was saying to me, you need to get ahead of this because this is going to be so helpful to them in the next 12 to 18 months. So anyway, that's how I came to be.
So let me ask you a question. I think journalism for the average journalist, I really never thought about this that much, but how long is the average shelf life of a journalist? I mean, can a person that goes into that career really expect to keep in that career for the next 30 years, or does that not happen? And it's a short shelf life, and then they've got to find, as you say, a new sweet landing spot, right?
Right, right. Well, it really depends on the job. Reporters and anchors, it's a very subjective business. It's a very visual business. And at some point, people's look, they're not 20 years old anymore. They're not 30 years old anymore.
Right.
And some TV stations, they just want a fresh new look behind the anchor desk. And so, yes, you could have a shelf life. There's a lot of pressure to look 30 years old when you're 50 or 55 or 60 years old. But there are anchors who have spent 20, 30, 40 years even behind the camera. Now, I think the bigger issue is, do you want to live that lifestyle for 20, 30, or 40 years? Because it's 7 days a week, 24 hours a day.
Good point.
Few holidays at home. You can't travel certain months out of the year because of sweeps if you're in television. You're on all the time. And do you want that lifestyle for that long? And that's what I think the key question is at what point do priorities change for you? And really that can be 5 years into the career, 10 years into the career, or 15 or more years into the career. And because journalism has changed pretty dramatically over the last decade, I think some people who thought they were going to spend 30 years suddenly decided that they didn't want to spend 30 years.
Yeah, I can understand that. I can understand that. Oh gosh, I had a question for you and it just escaped me.
You just interrupt me next time. Just interrupt me and ask the question.
Oh, I know what it was. I know. I got it. What made you want to be a coach? Because coaching can be demanding in itself. I know that you care about people and all that, but I'll tell you what, coaching is a demanding profession. If that is all you do and you just have coaching clients, it can be very lonely. It can be very challenging depending upon your clientele and what you need to do. You also kind of need to know when to cut the cord and when not to. What made you want to be a coach and go into coaching business?
Well, I've been a coach my whole career, Betty. I just didn't call myself that. I mean, I have been in the people business for 30 years, whether it was managing newsrooms and staff inside a newsroom, working with them on getting better at their craft, managing personalities, to when I moved into an agency, I was a senior partner and I had teams of people that I needed to coach and motivate and, get rid of the barriers that were keeping them from being their best professionals. And that's what I loved. I absolutely adored working with people and watching them flourish and really attain their goals. And that was what really got me excited. So I've done this my whole career. And what I really realized is based on the information I had about my own move from journalism into another entity, based on my own expertise in starting up 2 companies myself, I knew that I could take all that insight and take what had been a year and 200 people for me and make it a 2-month to 4-month exploration for someone else. And I thought, you know what? I wish someone had been there like that for me. I can be that person for someone else. And that got me super excited because I had started my own consultancy and I didn't have a huge staff. I bring together other professionals to work on clients with customized teams, but they're all people who have 10, 20 years experience. I wasn't working with people really deeply on how to get better and grow and move into different positions. And I missed that. So this really allows me to get back to what I had done for 20 some years when I was within news organizations and also formal agencies.
Got a question. Right now, spring 2021, I think that coaching is incredibly important. I think that this is a time, whether we ask for it or not, that we take the opportunities to reevaluate our lives, our vision, our purpose, what we need to do, where we want to go. what's significant to us right now, and also our legacy. So I would think that this is an incredibly relevant opportunity right now for people to take advantage of. And so talk to me a little bit about that, and then also share with us what your curriculum is like. And if it is only for journalists, and then how it can benefit other people that are perhaps not journalists, but how it can benefit them also.
Right. So I think right now we're starting to pull out of this COVID mire that we've been kind of gripped by. And I think it's been a year of, it's been a difficult year for many, for all of us really. But it's also been a year that's allowed us to really reprioritize what's important to us. For many of us, it's been an opportunity to sit and think. We've had a little bit more time to do that. We haven't had the busyness of our lives to distract us from really thinking about what we truly want and what we want our future to be. And I think now that we're starting to move out of COVID a little bit with the vaccines, it's time to start putting some of that thinking into action. So it's timely because it is spring and we all are thinking about spring cleaning or recalibration at this time. But I think it's taken on even more importance because of what we've been through in the last 12 to 18 months. It's interesting, you said something about legacy. One time I was interviewed for an award that I was up for, and somebody said, well, what will be your legacy? And I said, and I believe it still today, I said, I believe my legacy will be the people who go on and do great things with their lives, because I was able to help them. And so I think you can see I've been a coach my whole career, because I do believe that's my legacy, whether it's with Jump Team and what I've been able to create, or with my previous teams that I've worked with in other organizations, seeing them grow and flourish and be successful at achieving their dreams is what will be my legacy that will live on well beyond me. So anyway, just a little aside.
Oh, I hear it. And that's the science of a truly dedicated coach that loves what they're doing. So tell us about your curriculum. Tell us about if Betti were to sign up with you today. I'm not a journalist, but if I were to sign up, what is the curriculum like? What can I expect? And who's it perfect for?
Yeah, it's perfect for someone who's really considering making a pivot in their career. Anyone. So while I do truly specialize in journalists seeking to make a move out of newsrooms, this really applies to anyone who's considering, I may not be fully satisfied, and I suspect there's something else out there for me, but I'm not sure what it is. And I could really use some help in ferreting out what that next move could be and help me get to that point of making that move. That's who this is perfect for. I really start at the very, very beginning, because many of us haven't really stopped to think, what could I do if I could just abandon it all tomorrow and start over? What would I do? And people sometimes just need to give some thought to that. So where we start in my curriculum is with that dreaming phase. What do I love doing today? What have I loved in my past jobs that I've really enjoyed? What have I hated and I never want to do again? If I could create the perfect job for myself, what activities would those include? And we really start to capture and document that, because what I'm doing is helping them envision what their next job could be. What are those activities? We don't put a title on it yet. We don't put a job name on it yet. But what are those activities?
What it feels like.
And what does that feel like? What would I do? Yes, exactly. What are my strengths? Yeah. I also invite them to ask others what their superpowers are. So, because oftentimes we see ourselves in one way, but others see us in a totally different way. So we're really kind of doing a gap analysis with this exercise, and that I invite them to reach out to 10 people who know them, maybe worked with them. It could be family, friends, colleagues, former coworkers, and ask them what their superpowers are. And then from that, we glean what others think of you, what you think of you. We start to meld it together to paint a little picture of the types of things that you're really, really good at that you also really love. We move then into what types of careers could those be? We start to look at job titles and job descriptions and different types of positions that are out there. And at the same time, I want to be a realist. We have to marry that up with your financial needs, right? Because for many, many people, they're afraid to make a move because they have the golden handcuffs on them. They're making a certain level of income. They need to meet the mortgage. They got to send their kids to college, all the things that we have to fund with our lives. And they're really fearful that they're not going to replicate that income. So we work through some financial considerations. We talk about creating potentially a portfolio career where you may have various income streams to give you a softer landing. And then we work on resumes, because the resume for someone who's pivoting their career is different than, say, a traditional resume. We work on cover letter, we work on LinkedIn, and really I focus a lot, Betti, on networking. That is the key. We do a lot of time on
building the relationships and all that.
That's right.
You really, does it matter how old a person is? Does it matter that they're a millennial making change? Or if it's a person who is close to retirement that wants to do a career change, or after retirement wants to continue their life and keep the momentum going in their life? It doesn't matter.
I've worked with all ages, Betti. I've worked with people who have been in their career for about 5 years. So that would put them in their late 20s, early, within 10 years, 5 to 10 years. So they are a millennial. I've also worked with those mid and late career professionals who are into 20 plus, 30 plus years of experience. So these are people who might be 45, 50 years old, 55 years old, and they're saying, am I too late to make this change? Is this not a possibility for me anymore? And actually, those are the people I love working with, because I know it's not too late. And I know they have so many valuable skills to bring. They just need the confidence, and they need help in pointing in the right direction. And so no, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. And that's where the momentum comes in, because job searches, I don't think there are so many different ways to go get a job right now. And, and do you go online? What platform are you using to find those jobs? What your resume needs to look like, who your contacts need to look like, what your networking needs to look like. It's very, very different than what it used to be. And it can be, I think it can be burdensome. I think it can be challenging. I think it can be scary. And it's important that people keep that momentum going when they're going through a job search, a job change. Right. How do you help your clients do that? How do you let them get despondent or say, I can't do this. This is my dream, but I don't think it's going to happen. How do you help them keep that momentum going?
Right. Well, the weekly one-on-ones help a ton, Betti, because I'm able to literally see them via Zoom weekly, and hear what their challenges are, see it on their face, what their body language is. And I try to get ahead of any of that feeling of despondency, because it is a head game. It is the positive, hopeful feeling really does help provide the momentum. I believe that you're putting out good karma, right? And good karma comes back to you. You put out good vibes, goodness comes back to you. So the power of positive thinking is a very powerful tool here. So the one-on-one every week is so vital for that, because I'm able to listen and really hear and try to really understand what are those fears that are holding them back or causing a barrier. And we work through that in real time. I also encourage them always to have someone other than me who's believing in them and supporting them. So one of the first things I ask is, what does your family think? What's your partner think? Are they supportive, right? Because it's important that they believe in this individual's desire to make a move as well. Because it takes a village to get someone to change, right? We're resistant to change as human beings. So you really need that support system. And then
it's natural to have those zig and zags too, right?
yes,
I mean,
absolutely. I call it a roller coaster, frankly,
it is.
because you'll have really big highs and then you'll have some really low lows. But what I say to them is, what's exciting about this journey is you never know when the next door will open, and you don't know who's going to open it for you. So every person you meet, every conversation that you have leads you in the direction of where you need to be going. It may not be this conversation that gets you there, but it might be the person they introduce you to that gets you there. And you need to really consider it as a journey. Can be a longer journey than planned. It can be a shorter journey than planned. In fact, I had one client, totally made my day. We thought she was going to be really jumping out of her position in September, October of this year. We were working well ahead of that with that end game in mind. She was applying for jobs because I encouraged her to go ahead and start applying. You just never know how long it's going to take. And we were kind of socked in for a long journey. She got a job offer. And not only did she get a job offer, but she got a job offer. They're holding the job until October for her because she has to go on maternity leave. So she is going on so she gets the job offer. She's going on maternity leave. She comes back from leave. She's going to start her new job. It is absolutely perfect. And we could not have planned it better. In fact, I want to say that we didn't even plan for that, right? We planned for September, October. So you just never know. And that is what's also exciting, but also a little concerning for some people.
Right. And I think that especially now, I mean, we're coming out of COVID. So if you think about it, those that have had jobs that have been able to stay and work at their jobs, either virtually or on site, they've gone through the long haul. They're a little tired. They're exhausted. Now the companies are coming up with new processes, new procedures, which is natural, which comes with the territory after COVID, but everything has changed. And I think it is the opportunity for organizations and people, employees, every person out there to look and evaluate what the new, I don't want to say new world is, or the new normal. I hate that term, the new normal, but things are going to change. So it's hard for a lot of people on the resiliency and the change and going through the tough times. And job search are never going to be straight line. I don't think they are. As you said, I love your example of having a journey. You're going to pivot. You're going to have zigzags. You're going to be happy and excited. You may not get the job at that time that you really, really want. It's part of the journey is okay, having the resiliency, trying another path, and then eventually getting what you really, really want that makes you happy, because life's way too short not to be happy.
That's right. Betti, you bring up a really good point about how things have changed so dramatically. I was reading a stat just this week about how 73%, I believe it was, people who were polled very, very recently were planning to change jobs, change employers. Because again, we've had a year to be thinking, right, considering what we want next. And they've decided that they're not happy with their current employer. So, it's again, a journey. Employers, to your point, as you said, need to understand that their employees have different priorities now than they did before COVID. They have different challenges. They're different people. We're all different people. We've been impacted so deeply by what we've been through in the last year, and they need to better respond to their staff, their employees, in different ways that perhaps they haven't been prepared for before.
And it's never too late to change, right? In fact, I kind of like change. I like that inertia that's built, and you start getting the momentum to go in a different path. I think if you continue to do something the same way, same thing every day, you get stale. Right. And so, but it's never too late, right? Never too late. No matter how old you are or what you're doing, get out there and just try. Get the energy going. Get that momentum going.
Right. Well, and you talk about momentum, right? So for anyone who's watching or listening today who thinks that they may want a career pivot, you talk about the need to change. We all need to be changing. If we're not changing, we're dying, right? We're stagnating. We are becoming complacent in a way that might not be advantageous to us in our current positions. We always need to be looking for how do we improve our skills? How do we get ourselves to that next step, that next goal? So what I hope people have done in the last year, and if they haven't, please consider doing it now, is what new skill could you develop right now that would keep your skills fresh, up to date, trend forward, help you in your current job, right? Much less help you get to the next job. So I encourage everyone to do that. Take stock of their skill set right now.
So when you take stock of that skill set, in fact, that's one of the things I talk about when I'm talking to my audiences on staying relevant. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's always
Right.
important to stay relevant in an ever-changing environment, in an ever-changing world. So what do you need to do to stay relevant? Well, you do an assessment, just like what you said. What are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? What have I avoided doing? Like maybe some technology or social media or whatever. But what type of strengths do you really encourage your clients to go back, maybe go back to school or go back and learn real quick or take a course or take a seminar, workshop, whatever? What are maybe the life skills and the professional skills that you encourage them to do the most?
Right. So I tend to get a lot of people who are in the communication fields, right? Marketing, communications. And with those especially, I encourage them to make sure that they're fluent in digital communications. I think most businesses today, no matter whether it's communications or marketing, but it's online. And I think a lot of them, of course, in the last year have moved online. So I think any kind of digital advancements that you can make in your skill set would only benefit you. So whether that's taking an online course, there's a lot of specialized entities out there that will allow you to get certifications, for example, in like Google Analytics or HTML or how to build a website or many, many other things that you can get certifications in. Or you can go and get, a mini master's degree online at your local university or college. Those are there's a lot of them out there. You also can do volunteer work, which I don't discount that, volunteering for an organization where you can actually learn the skills on the job while volunteering. And I also encourage people to consider raising their hands for other projects in their current position that might allow them to get exposure to these types of skill sets so that they get paid literally for learning those skills and applying them. So there's lots of different ways to do it. But I encourage people to figure it out and get those skills. And I do think digital it's here to stay. It's not going anywhere. And I think more and more industries will find that their digital skills are going to be in demand.
One of the things I thought of when COVID first hit, and I was looking at the future, and I thought, okay, this COVID thing's going to be around for a little while. When the vaccination comes out, when people start taking it, when we're starting to get back to whatever our world's going to be, I did not want to look back and say, geez, I had at that time 2 months or 4 months, and then it went to half a year. It's been a year. And I didn't want to be looking back and saying, my gosh, I had that time. Mm-hmm. I didn't want to say I let that time go where I could have been improving my skills. I could have been trying this. I could have finished that book, or I could have gone out there and did my research or learned a new program or something like that. Didn't want to regret that. For some reason that was given to us, whether we liked it or not, take advantage of it. And that's one of the things that I promised myself personally, take advantage of this bad situation, because we'll come out of it. That's
right.
We want to come out stronger. What, when people are looking to make a career change, what's the biggest advice you can give them? What's the strongest tip you can give them?
Network.
Okay. Talk to me about, you mentioned that earlier. Talk to me about networking.
Well, first, I recommend that if you aren't networking, you need to be networking, whether you're looking for a job right now or not. It's always best to keep a pipeline warm. So, and I think right now, in this past year, there's been many opportunities to do that. Used to when you were networking, you'd meet for coffee or you'd meet for lunch, or you might hop on a phone call. Well, now the world has completely changed. Networking can be a simple Zoom meeting, something that we're doing right now.
Mhm.
And I think people are willing to connect with you for 20 minutes, 30 minutes to say hi, to reconnect, hear how each other's been doing since COVID, and hearing what's going on in their lives. I think people have been craving that more than ever, and doing it virtually is now commonplace. So there's no excuse for not networking, number one. Number two, let the people that you're networking know that this year's been one that you've really started to explore what's next for me. And if you don't have it figured out, it's perfectly okay to say, and I haven't figured it out, but I really am thinking about what might be next. And I thought, speaking with you, just letting you know that I'm considering that, me, maybe you have some thoughts, or what's going on at your company, and just using the time to reestablish these relationships, because at some point when you are ready, you're going to reach back out and say, I'm ready. I'm really thinking about making a move. Here's the direction I'm leaning in for my next career, and I would love your help. Do you have someone you can introduce me to at your company? Is there someone else that even not at your company, but another organization, who I could meet, who you think would be a good connection for me? And you're going to want to gear that up, but you don't want to start from zero to do it. So I always say, start reaching out, reconnecting with people. Now's a great time to do it, even if you don't know if you're really going to make a move or not, because you never know when you will need to do it. And so I always say, start with the warm, start with the hot. So the hot would be someone you know really, really well. You could just pick up the phone today and call them. The warm would be someone that maybe you've lost contact with, but you still know. Or it could be someone that you could be introduced to by a mutual friend or colleague. The cold is, yeah, go ahead. I was going to say, the cold is someone you don't know from Adam, right? Like, you don't know them. But I'm all about the cold call, because I believe in the goodwill of others. I believe people really, really want to help other people. And 9 times out of 10, they're going to give you a little bit of time, even if it's just an email, right? So I'm a strong believer in the cold call. You have nothing to lose with a cold call. So there's those three different types of outreaches.
Cold calling can scare so many people, but I think if they start, there's a concept out there, the circle of influence.
Yes.
So the smaller circle in the middle is your family, your friends, the people that know you. Start calling them, let them know. It also takes guts sometimes for people to spread the word. Yeah, I need a job, or I need to find a new career, or I'm in a transition. And that makes you a little vulnerable, and you got to get comfortable with that vulnerability. But you start small, and then with your little niche group that you talk to a lot, and then your friends that you know, your acquaintances that you know, and then or company people that you work with in different companies and that you had contact with. And then people that you don't know that you're going to find out about on LinkedIn and other platforms out there to really start marketing. What are the 2 questions? What are the platforms that you suggest your clients use when they're out there marketing and creating and energizing their relationships? What are the platforms you like? What do you also suggest joining groups? Here in Dallas, we have Success North Dallas, which is phenomenal for meeting other professionals and organizations from different companies. Do you suggest that they do that? What kind of platforms, what type of organizations? Does everything need to be virtual? Can we start gradually going in and meeting in person, and maybe not shaking and hugging, but good Lord, just, hi, it's good to meet you.
Well, yes. So I'm a huge believer in LinkedIn. There's millions of people out there on LinkedIn. And so that is my go-to resource always. I always say that. There's groups on LinkedIn that you can join. So areas of specialty that you can seek out. So if you've identified where your career may be going next, seek out those groups on LinkedIn, get invited to those, raise your hand and say, I'm interested in joining, and start to create community within those groups. I think that's huge.
And don't be afraid, right? Don't be afraid.
Oh, what have you got to lose? You have absolutely nothing to lose. And let's remember that you're not necessarily asking for a favor. You have something valuable to give.
This is true.
And so if you think about it that way, you just need to let people know that you have this valuable thing to share with them. You're not asking for a favor. You're letting them know that they can take advantage of this valuable thing, which is you. And the other thing is, always ask people, what can I do for you? How can I help you? This is not a transaction. It is a relationship. So treat it relationally. And if there's not something today that you can do for that person, think about how you can pay it forward for them. Maybe in the course of the conversation, you learned that they have a passion for bird watching, making it up, and in one of the things that you're reading, you come across this great hotspot for bird watching. Send it to them and say, hey, I was reflecting on our conversation. I thought you would find this valuable. Again, it's your thought. You're being thoughtful. You're keeping them top of mind. Yes. Will that change their life? No, but it's just a wonderful way to express that you care about them. So treat it as a relationship, not as a transaction. Flip your mindset on, I'm asking for a favor versus I'm alerting you to something of value. I think it makes all the difference in the world and helps your confidence in reaching out.
Exactly. Let me ask you another question. How many of your clients are looking to make that leap and land on their feet within another company? Or how many of them are also looking at starting their own companies, but being entrepreneurs? I read that that's a trend right now. The more and more people want to start their own company. That's riskier right now in our world. But what are your thoughts on that?
Well, of my clients, I would say 90% of them want to go inside an organization, a company, a nonprofit, another organization. The other 10% want to start their own companies. And I do believe it's because they're risk averse, right? I mean, it's risky enough that they want to pivot out of news that they've been in for 10, 15, 20 plus years. They really can't even envision that they could start from scratch, right? Starting their own business. So I think that's why I'm seeing about 90% wanting to go into another organization. But I am a huge believer in starting your own thing, right? I mean, I've done it twice, and I wish I had done it sooner, right? So, there's ways to do it that can help you lower your risk. So I have one client, for example, who is one of those entrepreneurial souls, and she's actually creating her off. Well, we worked together. We did the business plan. She's got the business set up and everything while we were working together. And she is building that while she's working full time, still in news.
Smart.
Because I said to her, you need to have that built. So when you're ready, you can just step right out into a fully fledged company. You don't have to have that risk. You can be building that slowly on the side. And so I do recommend that you do that. If you aren't ready to flip that switch and just start something from scratch, shut down the one thing, start the new thing, start to build it on the side, start to build it in the nooks and crannies of your day until you really can commit 100% to that business. And that really helps mitigate the risk. It also allows you to see if you have the temperament to be an entrepreneur. Not everyone does, and not everyone's going to be successful at it. So you'll learn a lot about yourself through that process.
But always, before you leave where you're at, have that plan B and make sure plan B is working for you before you make that change.
I highly recommend it. Now, not everybody can do that, Betty, of course, right? They might find themselves suddenly without a job, but I still say, if you can do it, do it.
Right. I would be negligent if I didn't want to talk to you about media and journalism and how that career has changed, especially this past year. And that's the majority of your clients, although you work with other people in different careers and different fields of work. It's tough. Is it tougher right now to be a journalist, to be a newscaster?
It's excruciatingly tough.
It's a tightrope line you're walking in so many ways, politically, corporately, just being a journalist in the world we live in today. It's tough, isn't it?
It's changed so much in the last, I'm going to sound like an old timer, but the last 20 years, and the last 10 and 5 years specifically, on a lot of different levels. Number one, the mom and pop shops of stations and publishing don't really exist anymore. Huge companies have bought up smaller, locally owned, family owned businesses. And so huge businesses now run the majority of the media in the United States. They're also politicized. So those companies now oftentimes align themselves with political philosophies, which have started to bleed into the quote unquote journalism at those entities, despite journalists' best efforts to keep them at bay. I won't go too far down that rabbit hole, only to say that as a consumer of news, you need to read a lot of different types of news in order to get a more balanced type of insight, because there's definitely points of view coming through now in what's still called journalism that truly isn't what I would call journalism. So number one, you have Big Brother in the newsroom now more than ever. Number two, because the business is all about the bottom line, we've seen, and because there's so many news options out there, there are fewer eyeballs on the product, meaning you cannot set advertising rates as high as you used to, which means that you aren't making as much money as you used to in that business, which unfortunately means that your staff is smaller. You have fewer people out there covering stories. So that means the people who are covering more and more and more. They're working harder, they're doing more. And they're not only doing a story for the newspaper or for the TV station, they're doing an online story. They're doing social posts. The amount of work has grown. And because there are fewer people in those newsrooms, they cover fewer things. And where you might have had beats before, like an education beat, a religion beat, you have fewer of those. So people are less specialized and they're more generalized. And so they could be covering crime one day and they could be covering City Hall the next day. And a lot of reporters don't want that. So it's challenging. The other is what I call the turn toward infotainment, where it's information cast in entertainment. And a lot of Big J, we call them journalists, it doesn't sit well with them. And so there's a lot of challenges. Now, on top of that, you've got COVID, which has meant that people have had to do their jobs remotely or with 6 feet. Very, very difficult to do those types of interviews. And number two, we've seen journalists come under fire in the last 4 to 5 years as pontificating quote unquote fake news. So the legitimacy of being a journalist has been now questioned. And we won't get into whether or not that's correct or not, if fake news exists or not. I don't want to have that conversation today. But what it has done is taken very legitimate journalists who have been proud of their craft and made their readers skeptical of their motivations, which flies into the face of what being a journalist is all about. So, now they've lost a lot of respect for the craft. And that's been really debilitating for many journalists. And on top of that, COVID has meant, nearly 40,000 journalists have lost their jobs. So there's 40,000 journalists out there that aren't employed in journalism today looking for their next career. So add all that up and it's not a great time to be a journalist.
Yeah, I appreciate your candidness and realistic approach to that. Because when I spoke with you a couple of weeks ago, we got into that conversation a little bit. I wanted my audience to have a different perspective, because I look at it a little bit differently, because I'm not in the trenches there with the journalists every day. but I've seen what happens. And I am the channel switcher to try to get the news, the real news. I have to evaluate it now. I go from one to another, just to try to get a feel of the real deal. And maybe that is what it's like right now. Maybe that's something that I have to do for a while. But in speaking with you and in knowing some other journalists, it's tough. It's tough right now. And I can understand why they want to make a jobs change. So thank you for that update and that perspective. That really helped. Okay, so I want to switch gears here a little bit, Maria. What is it like to work with you? When people, in fact, you might want to take this opportunity to tell everybody about the 1 free hour of coaching you're offering. But in addition to that, what's it like to work with you? I mean, I've loved interviewing you and I've loved having you on the podcast. You are such an original, authentic person. You're the real deal. I love that about you. So tell us what it's like to work with you, please, and then about what your offer is.
Yes, thank you so much, Betti. Well, of course, it's a real pleasure to work with me, right? No, to work with me, number one, you have to be committed, right? Like, I demand you do weekly homework, right? So I'm looking for someone who really is serious about making a career pivot or exploring it. Doesn't mean that at the end of our coaching, I'm expecting them to make that pivot, but I want them to know they have options. So what I need from someone is, one, they seriously want to explore, which means they're willing to commit to that weekly Zoom coaching call that we do in person. They're willing to commit to doing the homework, which is the curriculum that we walk through together. And they're willing to be open and honest and transparent with me, because that's the only way I can help them. So I'm really looking for a partner here, right? Like when I say coach, I'm looking for it to be a two-way street. A partnership is really what I'm looking for. So I'm looking for someone who's ready to make that kind of commitment. And again, to explore, not to necessarily to decide, but to explore. And then, it all starts with a phone call. And that's what I'm offering your viewers and listeners today, is the opportunity to hop on a call with me for an hour, let me get to know you, hear what you're thinking, what you might be struggling with, and maybe give you something to consider as you ponder your next move. So yes, that's an hour call, free. I normally would charge for that, but for your listeners, Betti, I'm excited to offer that free for them.
Thank you, Maria. And so Zach's going to be running your contact information on the banner below. However, go ahead and for our listeners that are not watching, and tell them how they can get in contact with you.
Yes, there's two ways. One, you can go to my website, jumpteamcoaching.com. There's a form on that site that you could fill out. Just put in Betti and Morning Momentum in there. So I know it's coming from you watching Betti and her podcast. Just make sure just to put that little mention in there, and put your email, your phone number in there, which the form requests for you to do. And I'll follow up with you right away on that so we can get it scheduled. Or you could reach out to me directly at my email, which is Maria, Maria, at jumpteamcoaching.com, Maria@jumpteamcoaching.com. The other way to reach me. And of course, I'll get right back with you.
You are awesome. You are so awesome. And okay, audience, isn't she wonderful? I mean, don't you feel comfortable listening to her? And I know you're going to be comfortable working with her. And if you want to give her a call and just throw around some ideas, I know that Maria would be very, very welcome to that and accepting. So Maria, I can't thank you enough for being on the Morning Momentum with Coffee podcast. You've given a different perspective. You've educated our listeners and given them a different perspective and an avenue now to make that change, to be resilient, to gather up the internal momentum that you're going to need to achieve what you want to achieve. And you know how I'm always preaching, you've got to live your purpose. Life is short. Do what you're passionate about. Live your purpose. You're going to be so much happier, and your contribution and legacy will be so worthwhile to those around you and the world. And I love that idea. And Maria, you are absolutely key in going with that program and living with that ideal. Thank you. Thank you very
Betti.
much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on today. It's just been a pleasure to be able to chat with you and
I love
great
my
questions. Yeah.
I love my guests because they're always so sharp and innovative, and they've got that momentum, and they're real. And I just love that. So thank you, Maria, for being our guest today.
Yeah.
And to everybody else, I hope you've enjoyed the show. It's spring 2021. Let's get rocking, okay? Let's make a difference. Let's generate our own momentum. Go out to the show. Like the show. Come on, give me a 5-star review. Subscribe. It's free. Give me a call. When my listeners reach out, I always personally respond to you. So let me know what you're up to. Let me know how you're doing. Remember, when you've got the right momentum and the right mindset, you can achieve anything. So thanks, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Maria, bless you. Take care. Stay safe. And thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Betti.
Bye, everybody. Take care. See you soon.
Thanks for listening to Morning Momentum with Coffee. Momentum matters more than strength. Your persistence will always win. Drive change, ignite cultures, and accelerate growth with your own personal momentum. To find out more about Betti, follow her on Facebook at Betti Coffee Presents for more inspiring stories just like this one. If you liked what you heard, leave us a rating and review. And if you want to hear more, subscribe to Morning Momentum with Coffee on your favorite podcasting platform. And remember, the greater the momentum, the harder it is to stop. Momentum creates motivation. Motivation creates opportunity. And opportunity creates results. See you next time.